Okay, so it is about midnight. Someone commented on me having a cute haircut. I literally took my hair like this and cut it with scissors without even looking in a mirror. And she has cut more hair off. Undoubtedly, I was raped and sodomized last night. And I just had the door open to try to get more air. And immediately there were sounds from up above. She's crawling up there. And I do have my 9mm. And I am sitting here contemplating if I should just start shooting holes everywhere I hear a sound in the ceiling. That'll draw the police and all that other stuff, and I'll just block the road so she can't leave, and she's going to have to go on foot and take off. But I try to have the door open to get more air and dissipate what's in here. But I wanted to take the dogs out. So let's talk about whether or not the other three cabins have people in it that we know. Number 10 has her, and I'm guessing she actually crawls from their attic space because it actually has a continuum that goes from all the way around into mine. I don't see any openings in mine, and she's small, but I don't think she can fit through the one in the bathroom, the vent. Making more coffee. And I literally hate coffee. I put so much sugar in it. And anyhow, these are my two dogs, just terrified to no end. They're just freaked out. And I think that they're freaked out when they look at me. That started happening, I realized, about the same time that she was wearing my clothes, because I could smell her on my clothes. I could smell that homeless decay smell on my clothing. And that's confusing to them, I'm sure. So I'm trying to get Vita to go outside so she can get some air. She's clearly dying from this. Let it be known that I feel like she is actually a product of a higher power. You know, like the Native Americans used to believe in before they only believed in the sex trafficking and drug trafficking. But the dogs were of a higher spirit. The ancestors, they're wolves. So, anyway, sitting here, and the dog's eyes are glassy and red, just like mine. And Miho wants to go outside, but Vita does not, and I hate doing that to her because it's just not fair. You know, the crazy bitch will say stuff to her from up above or make noises, and it's just freaky for her. It's not fair. But I'd like to have her go outside and get some fresh air. And maybe there'll be people outside in the bushes that'll toss shit at us. I don't know. They've done that before. But yeah, you know, it's not that I hate all native peoples. It's really not. What I hate is the ideology that they're better than everybody else because they're more connected to the foundations of how humanity started, which is all people. Like if you look at the Celtic cross, it's all a symbol of the earth and everything. All people started in those same basis, because that would be the development of humankind. That you would start to acknowledge your environment and how that affects your life and see that as powerful because it provided you food or death, or shelter or death, you know. So everybody saw that. And the big thing is that that's just not the culture that exists now. Because there are Native Americans right now. I would say that there is no fucking way in Kanab, Utah, that the criminal element that they did not tap into when I arrived here is not the Native Americans. It is most certainly the Native Americans. I would guess that they run the criminal element here. And so they're going to be contacted the moment I come into town, and they're going to be sitting here killing these animals. These, the ancestors of the wolves, that I think that they gave a fuck about. See, there is no culture that's like that anymore. Nobody does. Nobody possesses that culture anymore. I mean, maybe some untouched civilizations that are way far away or whatever, but the Native Americans in this community are more than likely, not all of them, but some of them are drug traffickers and sex traffickers. Because they're going to be the ones that head the criminal element here. And that's just a guess. I don't know shit about Kanab, Utah. And it's a lot of white people, but there are Native Americans here. I've seen them, and they've given me all their little smirky looks, and I've seen this one couple come in to shop every time I'm in there, which is a little odd. Just because if you lived here, like, and you lived a normal life where you didn't have to be on the run and everything, then you actually go food shopping, and then you don't food shop the very next day. I don't know if they're trying to buy shit on my dollar, on my dime, but I'm not using my credit card, so I'm being very specific about what I use that for. And I'm not using it for small shit, because I don't want them to be able to do it. But would they be likely to be sitting out there in the bushes and tossing shit at the windows? Probably. They did that in Hawaii, they did that in Los Angeles, they did it at RV parks, they did it at campgrounds. Not the Native Americans per se, but probably some of them at some point, depending on the area. But this is a video about Native Americans killing dogs, and the relatives to their ancestors, their worshipped animal, you know, which unduly deserve that worship and deserve that respect. And these animals deserve that too. And they're doing it on the grounds of an animal sanctuary. And see, this is what I'm going to say. And I don't know, again, I don't know shit about this area, but this is what I would guess, is that there is some huge resentment from the Native American community towards the Best Friends Animal Sanctuary. Because they have pretty much taken over this town. And they are most likely the biggest employer. They're most likely the biggest landowner. And that's not going to go over well. And I know all this from growing up in Hawaii and how the Native Hawaiians are. And it doesn't matter that this is a place for healing and whatever. It's theirs, because that's how now all people feel, is that everything's theirs, instead of realizing that it belongs to all of us. And it always has. It's all connected. You know, this land's connected to the land on the other side of the fucking earth. It's all connected. It all functions as one fucking spinning ball that is within another another system, solar system. And it's all connected, and it all matters, and what happens here matters, it affects what happens over there. And when I meet a group of Native people that actually live by that reality and don't want to claim everything and own everything just like everybody else has throughout history, then I'll have respect. But everybody wants to be the owner. Everybody wants to be in charge. Everybody wants to have the power, control, and the money. Everybody's the same. So it's funny that they've labeled me this big-time racist that hates all natives. First of all, I hate everybody. Because you know what I've seen in this is that I've seen black people, white people, Native American, Native Hawaiian, Samoan, Japanese, Chinese. I mean, it's run the gamut of who's decided to participate in this. And people who raped me have run the gamut as well. So, do I hate one group of people? No, I don't. I just don't. It's funny how I'm a racist because I don't consider Native Hawaiians or Native Americans better than everybody else. And I just don't. I don't see the proof of that. If I did, then I would. But I don't. I don't see that. There's too much drug trafficking. There's too much sex trafficking in those communities for me to say that they're better than anybody else. Period. So, and here they are doing this on the grounds of the Best Friends Animal Sanctuary, which I'm guessing they don't have that much respect for. And yeah, killing these animals slowly, torturing them, filling this room with toxic shit. Killing Vita. Vita. Hey, Vita. Can you get up? Can you get up? Can you get up? I've been sensing for a while that Vita is very sick. She's just older. There's been too many times where, like, there was a time in Los Angeles that they just gassed the shit out of the bedroom, which I rarely slept in. They just gassed the shit out of it. And the dogs were in there. And so they gassed the shit out of the dogs. And so when they came in there to do their gang raping, the dogs wouldn't move because they were too sick. They were too sick and they're too drugged. And they tried treats. I could hear them opening the packages. I could hear her going, Vita, Vita. I could hear her whispering to Vita, trying to get Vita off the bed. Because apparently they don't love to gang rape me when the dogs are right there. Maybe a little afraid that during their raping that the dogs might decide to fight back or something. So, I mean, they've gassed them so much that they won't even move and take a treat or do anything because they just don't feel well and they're so sick. And that's who these people are. I just never want you to not forget, because I love how the Native Hawaiians want to make themselves out to be something that they're not. Native Americans want to do the same, white people want to do the same, black people want to do the same. Bottom line is, there are just some fucked up people. And they're in every single ethnicity on this planet. And every single ethnicity possesses people in it that will rape children, that will rape women, who will murder people, who will torture people, who will poison and torture animals to death. Every single one. That make me a racist? For calling out the truth? No, it doesn't. It doesn't make me a fucking racist. Period. It's fucking bullshit. It's a dialogue that they've created because it gets to people who are mentally weak, who have no interest in finding out the truth for themselves, who want to buy into something because it makes them feel better, to think that they're on the right side. The reality is, every single person that's helped these people has helped people who are rapists and murderers, who make money off of the rape of children. Every fucking one of them. And when I say every fucking one of them, that would be Brian and Frances Cam and their son Bryant on Alani Drive. That would be Mr. Negoshi's grandson. That would be Jeffrey Kuhn and his wife, Janine, and their daughter, starts with a J. They did the whole J thing, their whole family. That would be all of them. That would be Harry and Patricia Casanel, who live up on Pady Drive, that housed this total nutcase that started this whole thing. That's just like the nutcase that's now up there. Obsessive, weird freak that has used this whole situation to become somebody. And that's what she's done. Now she's no longer the homeless crazy bitch in Hawaii. She's the crazy bitch who's in my attic, who all the rapists worship. That's all of them. And that would be the apartment manager at Windsor Lofts, named Ashley, I believe, who broke into my apartment. And that is breaking in, even though she used a key, in order to get to my computer, because I had just paid someone to wipe it clean, because I was trying to do something that they didn't know about, try to find a place to live, so they wouldn't know I was going there, which is what everybody says. Well, how do they know where you are? Because it's not that hard. They get on my computer, they get on my phone, like, I don't hide. I have to get mail. I had renters. I mean, it's not that easy to just disappear, Maybe criminals know how to do that. I'm not a fucking criminal. Never hung out with them. So, I hung out with a pot dealer. which they murdered. Oh, let's go through the list of people that they've murdered, who I believe that they've murdered. That would be Colin Hemme, who was a pot dealer, who was my best friend for 10 years. And I think that when this all happened, they pretty much got him on their side by showing them my personal journal that was on my computer that talked about how I would never be with him because he always did have a crush on me, along with a lot of other girls that he was friends with. Wasn't entirely that special. I wouldn't say always had a crush. He at some point did. And I talked about how I would never be with him because he was obese and I'm an active person and I like to do stuff and my favorite thing to do is go hiking, and I would never be in a true relationship with somebody that I was actually in a long-term committed relationship where I actually, without them being able to hike up a mountain. I no longer can do most of those things because of her psychopathic torturing, but back in the day. And even still what I'm doing anyhow. So Colin Hemme, I believe they killed Carla Krall, who was one of the only friends I had left when they murdered her. I was in Santa Rosa, and I got a call from my mom saying that Carla was missing and that she had been missing for 2 weeks, and she didn't tell me because she thought it would stress me out and that I would be upset. And of course I was. She was one of the best people I've ever known on the planet. And I wouldn't say the nicest, nicest, sweetest person. She was German, but she was literally the most generous person I've ever known. And she just didn't have a lot, but she always gave, and, she just was a really fucking amazing person. And I really admired her, I really looked up to her. And she was always a referral for me, which they didn't like. They didn't like the fact that I could always have a person to give me a referral. And I think that's why they killed her, because she was one of the only people left on the planet that had my back. And why I think that is because the circumstances of her disappearance and then later found dead, and their conclusion that she had killed herself, I do think she killed herself, but I think she was Jim Jonesed into it. Supposedly she had just started seeing some guy, and in the 20 years I knew her, she only mentioned one guy ever, and she just wasn't going to be that kind of person. She had a very large social circle of friends, but definitely wasn't the kind of person that would just hook up with somebody that she didn't know. But supposedly she was seeing this guy, and they went on a date to the cemetery. And I found this out through a friend that I overheard them talking about it or something like that. And then the other clue, which I thought was odd, because that's just totally out of what I would ever see her doing. She was a very cautious person, just a very thoughtful person, incredibly thoughtful person about her life, environment, other people, methodical. About her food, so I don't see her just like deciding to go to a cemetery for a date. It's just weird. Just out of character, weird for anybody, except for people who hang out in cemeteries, which is not very many people. And then the other thing is that a whole bunch of mail came in for credit card applications after she died, meaning to me that the people who helped her to kill herself, convinced her to, got in her head, whatever, had done that, thinking that they could also rob her, or rob her identity. Just so many things that just really didn't make sense to her committing suicide. She had been doing a ton of dental work, a ton of dental work, just really addressing her health and her teeth, and she just had some more genetic things, nothing about not taking care of herself or anything. It was just, and spent thousands, and we all know what it's like to go to the dentist. We all know. Nobody goes to the fucking dentist if they don't have to go to the fucking dentist. It's a fucking shitty experience. I just don't see it. I've had my own moments when I was being abused and I couldn't deal with it, and I was young, and that I contemplated stuff like that. And in those moments, they're not around the same time period that I'm doing anything that's very proactive for myself, like getting a shit ton of dental work done. It's just painful, costly. You wouldn't be doing that shit if you were contemplating suicide. You just wouldn't be doing it. It wouldn't make any sense. So I think that Jim Jonesed her. I think this guy that became her whatever friend got in her head. And apparently she was bipolar. And That's something I didn't know, and I had known her for 20 something years, and I think she never told me because she worked with my mom, and I think that she was afraid that that would be, that I would tell my mom that she would be judged. I think that's why. And also, maybe my failings as a friend, and just not, and when she was like 20 something years older than me, just always putting her on a pedestal instead of ever really thinking of her as having her own problems. Because I just admired and looked up to her so much, and I think in that way I never was there for her as a friend, because I didn't give her a chance to be just a regular person. Because she used to say to me, like, you're putting me, like, and I'd be like, but you are, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what to say. Like, I know you're not perfect. I know you have whatever, but that's not what makes you up there for me. What makes you up there for me is that you actually give a fuck about other people and help people, and do it at your own expense, which is huge. If people help people when they have tons of means, it's different than if you really don't have much and you're still helping people. It's more meaningful. So Carla Crowell, and then possibly Ray Alamon, who was my friend in Los Angeles. And this is just a possibility. I don't know this for a fact at all. It was just odd, about a year before I decided, and when I started talking about moving back to LA and getting out of Hawaii, and because I'd gone back to Hawaii just to sell my house. But they were preventing that. They were preventing that by not letting me get contractors, by telling contractors not to help me, by getting realtors to not want to help me sell my house, which is really odd. But yeah, they all just said they didn't want to have any involvement with these people. But yet it's all in my head. So weird. So strange how I have to deal with people saying it's all in my head, and then in the reality of it so being blatantly out there and so not in my head, real, where they actually go and talk to people and tell them not to help me. So I've been 8-balled, is what I was told when I first got back, along with my father, for different reasons, I guess. Who knows? Maybe they went after him because of what, because me. Maybe they went after me because of him. I don't know. But at any rate, Ray Alamon was a homosexual Mexican man who was in his 70s when I moved to Los Angeles in the very December 2014. And I met him when I moved into my studio house with my horrible, crazy landlord. Look at that. Just pain. Yeah, she went to town. You can actually see the mark she left on that knuckle, and that just hurts like a motherfucker. That's all from last night. And anyhow, I think they killed him because he would have been somebody I would have reconnected with and had a friendship with and had a, it's always good to have people. I haven't, this whole experience really made me not want to be around people, in part for their own safety, in part for my safety. Like the last friend I had in Portland, they immediately went to her house and started breaking into her house. And, I think she felt like she needed to end our friendship because she was starting to get paranoid and think things that weren't real, when the reality was, and probably deep down somewhere in there she'd know the truth, which is they were. The moment that we became closer, that I asked, then she had asked, I wish there was anything I could do, is there anything I could do? And the moment that I actually was like, okay, fuck this, I need help. She told me how there was a guy that was outside her apartment complex in the morning that she had never seen before, every time she went out to walk her dog, first thing in the morning. And that's when they were probably breaking into her house, getting on her computer, getting into her phone, if all those things were connected, and just making sure that they knew what the hell she was doing. So if she wanted to help me at any point, they would know about it. But yeah, I think it's possible that they killed Ray. Supposedly he dropped dead. I actually, when I came back here to the mainland, I can feel the bed shaking from Vita convulsing. So I actually ran into a former neighbor of ours, me and Ray's, and he told me that Ray died. That a year ago he had dropped dead from a heart attack. And it's just a possibility. I don't know. The thought came into my head after I grieved, cried, got upset, that maybe they had killed him. Because it's something they would do. You know, they have no value of human life at all. You know, they wouldn't think about Ray or anything like that, or his dogs, or, you know, they don't value human life. And that's another thing that's so funny about Native people being involved in this and claiming any sort of, because the value of human life is usually there in Native communities. At least the acknowledgement of that it is of some value. And that it's not, it's a precarious thing. And not to be taken for granted. And definitely not to be just taken with no thought. But yeah. There's Vita. I don't know if you can see the convulsing. She was just convulsing. But yeah, Ray Alamon. I think it's completely possible that they gave him a heart attack. Oh, and then that reminds me of the other person I think they might have killed, which would be Tom Purdy. Sorry about that. Which would be Tom Purdy. He's a neighbor on my parents' street, on Papala Street. He had been our neighbor. They had owned the house since I was born. Him and his sister, first his mother, and then him and his sister. And he had started living there I don't know how long ago. And he knew what was going on. And you know how I know that? Is because I caught him outside my parents' house walking around at like 2 o'clock in the morning with no flashlight, no lights on in his house. I caught a guy outside on my parents' property, and he ran into Tom Purdy's garage and hid. And when I called the police, and then I saw him get out of the garage and meet up with a car at the end of the street, it's a dead-end street, and take off. So I knew that Tom was involved, and he knew, and he was very involved with the sovereignty. Pounded his own poi, sold poi, sold taro mix. You have to be very. That's a labor of love. Most Hawaiians don't pound their own poi. It's a very labor-intensive process. You can sell it for a lot of money, but you still ain't gonna make up for the amount of time that you're putting into it. So he just had a very big respect and involvement with the Native Hawaiian community, and most likely the sovereignty movement. I constantly saw Tom Purdy driving to my side of the valley, and going up to the house, the big sovereignty house over there, their little headquarters over on the Woodlawn side. I saw him doing that almost every day. But I think at some point he had doubts about the fact that he was helping to gas, to rape and sodomize his neighbor that he had known for decades, that had never done anything to him. And maybe he was starting to doubt that the sovereignty movement was really something good, if this is what was involved in it. And maybe it was the moment that I acknowledged that I believed that they raped my mother, my 81-year-old mother, who he was friends with, who my mom liked. Despite the fact that he was kind of a weird guy, he wasn't like incredibly likable, I would say. I liked him, but I stopped liking him at that point when I saw him walking around his house at 2 o'clock in the morning, when he covered up the fact that someone had been in his garage that was just prior on my mom's property. Anyhow, I got a call when I was in Hawaii that Tom Purdy had dropped dead of a heart attack, just like Ray. Just dropped dead in his bathroom. I have a strong suspicion that Tom had started having second thoughts about the fact that they had raped my mother, an 81-year-old woman, because they couldn't get to me that night. The fact that they were constantly breaking into the home. The fact that they were gassing animals, and just the sickness of it. And maybe started realizing that the sovereignty are sex traffickers and drug traffickers, and not really for Native Hawaiian people. more for let's make money off of putting our people on methamphetamine kind of people. And let's take our children and go send them to the mainland to make money off of them being raped. Those kind of people. Anyhow, those are the people I think got killed in connection with what's been going on with me. And I don't have any proof of that. I've talked about it before. So Colin Hemme, Carla Crowell, Ray Alamon, Tom Purdy. Am I forgetting anybody? I don't know. Maybe there's people that have died that I don't know about. Maybe the apartment manager that used to work at Windsor Lofts. Maybe they've taken other people out that they might presume to be problematic later on. I don't know. It would be something worthwhile to look into. So, that's that. The people that they've killed, and us sitting here choking on this fucking shit that's just fucking burning my eyeballs and killing my animals. There you go.